What's up, everybody? Sorry about that. That was my bad. Excuse me. As y'all can tell, I am sick. Yay, I'm sick. But we actually have some pretty awesome news to share this week. Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clear. Can
Oh,
you hear
okay,
me?
good. That's good. Just want to make sure. Yeah, so awesome news of the week. We have a coach, or at least we will as of 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And, not to toot my own horn here, but it was the guy that I wanted. And I'll be honest, it's the guy that I've wanted for 4 years now. Literally, when the Dynamo were determining whether to go, where to go before Owen Coyle, basically at the conclusion of the Dominic Kinnair era, my desire was this guy. And even though the Dynamo haven't officially confirmed it, it was confirmed by Gabriel Brenner to Mark Berman, and that is about as official as it gets. Plus, there were 8 or 9 other national soccer media people that cover MLS that confirmed it with their sources as well, which is pretty strong enough to say it's a definite at this point. And like I said, I know that there will be an official announcement tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., which, again, can't get a whole lot more official than that. I'm working on getting the video up, guys, for me so you guys can see me talking to you, because I know that you guys just absolutely love that. But, Mark, how are you? It has been, gosh, it's been a few weeks. And,
Yeah, man.
I want to know how you're doing, what's going on, what you've been up to, and what's on the plate for you for the next few weeks?
Yeah, man. We've been MIA for a bit, just traveling around, huh?
Both
You
of us,
you in
yeah.
Alaska? Yeah, you in Alaska. I went spent a week and a half in Argentina. Um, just kind of living life, man. you know. Uh,
Work doesn't stop, that's
I'm
for
not sure.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's crazy, but yeah, but just one little thing I want to share with the guys about my trip to Argentina, man. So I got a chance to go to both La Bombonera, which is Boca Juniors Stadium, and then River Plate Stadium.
Hmm.
They're amazing. It's amazing to see those stadiums, especially legendary stadiums like that for such big clubs that have been around for such a long time. And unfortunately, going to a Boca Junior game is damn near impossible. and that honestly, I mean, who knows? Maybe someday the Dynamo will have this type of problem, but so their stadium seats about 50,000 people, right? And during league games, they don't allow they don't allow visiting teams because all their members take up all their seats, and they have a 6 year waiting list behind that.
Right on.
So but if it's an international match, like say for example, like if the Dynamo somehow ended up going to go play Boca Junior and over there, they would allow like 2,000 seats for visiting fans, international matches or something like that. But yeah, man, it was a fun trip. Loved it. Beautiful atmosphere, beautiful everything out there. So but now ready to get into the topic of Tab Ramos to the Dynamo. Exciting. My Twitter feed was blowing up today with all this excitement from everybody. Um, Congratulations on getting the right choice. you know, I'm excited. Not as excited as I would have been if it would have been Alonso or my guy Mohammed, but I'm still excited nonetheless. And let's see where it goes from here, man.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some trepidation, and my video, I I'll go into it later. But long story short, I had to reset my PC earlier this week because I was having problems with it stopping completely, just freezing up. So I did a Windows reset. Good lord, did a Windows reset on it, and that unfortunately removed my Logitech software, so I have no control over my camera. I
Oh,
could get it up there, but I've got no control over it to do the zooming and all the other stuff that I would do to get you guys just me. But that'll be next show. I'll have that fixed. Um, we kind of scrambled, or I kind of scrambled this afternoon to get everything reinstalled. It actually removed OBS on me too, or Streamlabs OBS, which is what I use for streaming, and for the actual stream overlays and layout and everything, and what shows the Discord chat. So I had to set everything back up from essentially from scratch. It saves some of the settings, but not all of them, which is why some of it still looks like it did before. But you'll also notice I added a donate button, guys. If you could do us a favor, if you are watching the stream or you're listening to the stream and you're like, man, I really like these guys, I appreciate what they bring, or you've watched our other 2 episodes, feel free to hit the donate button. That money will be shared between both Mark and I, and will go directly back to the podcast/show. It'll pay for things like more webcams and software and cool effects and other equipment that's necessary for more professional quality streaming than we even have now. Kind of one of my next projects that I want to work on is going to be tied to an actual intro video, kind of like a TV intro video that'll also have some good audio behind it, so you have a podcast intro for our podcast as well. But so if you guys could do that favor for us, that would be hugely appreciated.
And also, guys, like, share, subscribe. We need to get these numbers up, man.
Yeah, so the quicker we get our subscribers up to 100, the faster we can get to a custom URL, so that instead of having those really ridiculous youtube.com/ here's a whole bunch of letters and numbers that don't make a whole lot of sense, instead of having that, we'll be able to have youtube.com/ Generation Orange, and you guys will be able to go directly to the channel that way. Great for us, great for y'all, and great for growing the show. Guys, we hope that at least the Tab Ramos news has put a smile on your face, everybody, at the very least. We were starting to get a little trepidatious over what may possibly be the announcement, who they may ultimately decide to go with. I was starting to, and I had even shared it with Mark and a couple other people, that I was starting to lean, based on what I was hearing, that the Dynamo weren't able to get, I knew that they were working on Tab. I actually knew that, but I had heard that it wasn't going to happen because they had something that they ran into that they weren't able to figure out, and this was as like last week. So apparently they did get it figured out. So hooray! Yeah, exactly. Hooray for that! Yay for that! Obviously, fantastic, wonderful, awesome. Excuse me.
No, honestly, man, I was talking to a couple guys. I was actually talking to a surgeon. Yes, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and we were talking about, like, man, what's the holdup and what's going on. And I was telling him, maybe they want to wait right now. The World Series going on, all this other stuff going on, and they want to make a nice little announcement where you can solely focus on them. And they picked the right day. They picked a good day. It kind of took my mind off the loss yesterday for a little bit.
I was just going to add, I suspect that had a lot to why they went ahead and made, and again, they haven't made the announcement. I think, though I do think the struggles of the Astros in the World Series has definitely opened the door for the Dynamo to kind of take some of that hype a little bit. And I think they're playing it very well by doing it when they're doing it now. Ahead of the World Series game tomorrow. And hopefully the Astros bounce back. I mean, we all want to see the Astros win, even Blues, I'm sure. And we definitely want to see the Astros win the World Series. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because it's always fun when that happens. But on the flip side of it, us as Dynamo fans, I think I speak for everybody when I say we also want to have some stuff in place before too long, because coming up very quickly, we have things like expansion draft. We have things like, the waiver draft, the re-entry draft. We have the actual super draft. Yeah, yes, there are 4 or 5 actual drafts that take place in the off season. They're all ridiculous.
They still do that?
Oh yeah. Oh no, they do every season, and it is the most ridiculous thing in the world. And
just to touch on the super draft for a little bit, I was talking to somebody. I don't know. It might have been you, Sean, but I was mentioning, like, man, you know what? Just give me money for each draft pick, man. like a first round give me 350K, TAM, GAM, whatever. Second round give me 200. Third round give me 150, or whatever. Just we're not. I mean, well, this is obviously pre-Tab Ramos. Maybe he'll have a little bit of a better touch with these draft picks and stuff like that. But man, that super draft hasn't fared well for us in a while.
Well, to be fair, it doesn't fare well for most teams. Most teams come away with, if they're lucky, one draft pick that maybe gets a few minutes here or there. The really lucky. There's 3 or 4 teams every year and they're not the same teams, but every year a team comes away with one draft pick that is good enough that he starts for his team and he plays. A lot of times that player starts because a player in the same position got injured during preseason, or something happened and they were able to slot that player in and give them minutes, and then that player turned out to be good enough to become a starter long term. But that's the. I was just gonna say that's against the norm. That's against the grain. That's not the normal.
Yeah, I mean, then like Cincy draft half the draft last year.
They had 6 picks in the first round, and they didn't exactly fare that well this season, and I'm sure that had part of it.
And in all honesty, I don't even remember who the number 1 pick was.
So Pat says, all right, Gen Orange, time to sales pitch Tab Ramos. So we're going to move away from the draft for just a second. We'll go back to the draft, though, because it is part of this discussion. His claim to fame is assistant coach to the U.S. men's national team under Klinsmann and leading the youth U.S. teams to major tournaments and getting absolutely trounced. Why should our fan base be excited? There's 3 things in particular, and I actually talked about this on I think that was our first episode. If it wasn't our first, it was our second episode, when we talked about coaching and who I wanted to be coached and mentioned Tab Ramos. The first thing is youth development. The guy understands how to develop youth players. And if there's one thing this club has struggled with since its inception, it is developing youth players. And I realize that is not necessarily going to get everybody excited, but that should at least get everybody going, okay, they have a focus, they have a vision, they have an identity that they want to become. Number 2, the guys' teams have always been high press, high counter, push the tempo, push the pace. They're not going to sit back. They're not going to, they're not just going to absorb pressure and then respond. They're going to push, push, push. So that's number 2, which is the big one. And number 3 is the guy has network contacts. If we thought Jordan was fantastic for helping us find players that were gems that were hidden out in the world of soccer, Tab Ramos's contacts will help with that as well. I'm going to give you a 4th one, even though I only said 3. Number 4, the guy understands the USSF structure and understands how to work it. We have never had a coach that truly understood how to work the United States Soccer Federation structure in terms of acquiring players, in terms of finding players, in terms of moving players through the academy, in terms of bringing players into MLS, in terms of finding those players in college or in other academies, etc. And number 5, again, 2 things that I didn't expect to give you guys. Number 5, the guy is respected in the world of soccer when it comes to U.S. players. Not just youth U.S. players, but U.S. players that are senior players. There are players that will be coming to the Dynamo that, frankly, will fit Tab Ramos' system simply because they've played for him before or because they've always wanted to play for him. He's going to be able to bring in players and attract players that actually want to play for the Dynamo because they want to play for him. We could never say that about Wilmer Cabrera. So do you want to know why you should be excited? It's not because we're going to be a smash mouth team next year and we're going to dominate all the competition. That could very well happen. But it's because for the first time in franchise history, as long after the Dominic Kinnear era, the team has an identity they want to go with. The team has a vision of how they want to get there. And the team finally has a coach that understands how to get them there. It doesn't have to be, and I never thought it had to be an MLS coach. It needed to be a coach that understood how to work within the U.S. soccer structure, though. And Tab Ramos understands that. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and I guess number 6, number 7. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, Tab, he checks marks a lot of boxes that Matt Jordan in previous interviews has wanted to accomplish with the Dynamo. I mean, you hear about his three tier of players that he wants. He wants to bring in young foreign players and build them up and develop them and then sell them off. What better guy to develop players like that than Tab Ramos, somebody who has achieved a lot with the youth national teams with what 3 consecutive World Cups, 3 consecutive top 8 finishes in those World Cups.
Yeah.
So I mean, that guy knows something. He knows how to get to the players. He knows how to motivate the players. When you bring them in young, they're willing to learn, and there's not that much ego, I guess you want to say, with younger players, especially developing players. The player who I think is gonna maybe garner a lot from this is Memo. I mean, Memo, he's not egotistic and he's willing to learn, and I think he's gonna take advantage of this. Take advantage of the abilities that Tab and the knowledge that he brings and all that other good stuff that he brings. But another reason to be excited for Tab Ramos, I mean, like you said, he has connection. This guy, he's well respected. They were just talking about him, maybe being the possible United States men's national coach. If it weren't for the whole little brother thing going on over there in the federation, when you got somebody like that, I mean, what more do you want as a coach?
Yeah, and Pat makes a really good point as well. He says, and Tab was able to get the youth teams to at least qualify for the major tournament, something that United States Soccer Fed wasn't able to do until he showed up. Basically made something out of nothing. And I want to point out, because I know it's been said, and I know this will continue to be said, well, he's never been able to win, at the highest level or what. He's never been able to win with those teams at the actual Youth World Cups. And that's fair, but he's also done it with less talent. That's the thing. He's done it with less talent over and over and over again, and he's always been in the picture. He's always been a team. He's always had a team that's been considered as one of the top 4 teams in every Youth World Cup that they've, the 2 or 3 the 3 or 4 that they've been to under him.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add one more thing, and I know I was only going to add 5 or 6 or how many ever we got to, but I'm going to add one more.
You said 3.
3, yeah, I know. And then, well, that's the thing. There's so much to like about the guy, right? But I'm going to add one more. And I think this is what you get excited about. The one thing that FC Dallas have held over us for the longest time as a club, even during the Dominic Kinnear era, was that they were good at producing youth talent. And they were so good at it that they stole talent from the Houston area that would have been part of the Houston Dynamo Academy or otherwise. With Tab Ramos, that doesn't happen anymore. With Tab Ramos, we're going to start stealing FC Dallas talent that's part of their pipeline from the from the Dallas North Texans or whatever they're called up there.
Let me add something to that. You bring something really great to the table when you talk about Tab Ramos and his ability to identify talent. But guess who was on his team for the U20? Do you remember a kid named Marcelo Palomino?
Yeah, you know who else was on his team in the U20s? A few cycles ago? Christian Lucatero.
Yeah, but
I'm just throwing it out there, not to totally derail your thought, but
But I bring in Marcelo for a specific reason. The Dynamo they want to sign the kid, right? But they don't. They obviously they're lowballing him, or something's going on there that he's not signing. He wants to go to Europe, which I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you have Tab there, who knows how to play him, knows how to get the best out of him. Maybe that closes that deal, and he's like, you know what, I'll sign. Because I know this guy's gonna develop me. He's gonna bring out the best of me. He's gonna motivate me, and then who knows? In a year or 2 years' time, yeah, I can go make that transfer to Europe, and then everybody wins.
Well, and bringing that up is actually a really good point because. There is a U17 crop, technically I guess U18s mostly now, but U17 crop that's coming out of the Dynamo Academy right now. There's 5 or 6 of them that are just phenomenal players. And they have a very good opportunity under Tab Ramos with the pipeline that is there to, actually find realistic opportunities to play senior minutes, and possibly even end up signing a bunch of homegrown contracts this year. And that's something we've not been able to do for a very long time.
I have a lot of friends whose kids are playing, club soccer, and I actually have 2 friends who next year their kids are going to be joining the Dynamo Academy because of all the great work that Paul has done to boost up that academy because you'd be surprised. The Houston Dynamo is the team for Houston. So obviously the mindset would be like, well, their academy should be the top academy in the city of Houston, right? But it's not. But it really wasn't for the last however so long ago. That the Dynamo had filled an academy. Uh, Honestly, a lot of people looked down on the Dynamo Academy as a step down from whatever club they were playing. Not anymore. People are really interested. People wanting their kids to go there. People want their kids to be developed with the Dynamo, and that's great because Houston is such a hotbed of talent in soccer, and because of all the different countries that are represented in the city, all different nationalities and stuff like that.
And
And
is that not something to get excited about as a fan? I mean, I realize that's not necessarily a win now type of statement, but
but
you know,
see, the thing is like okay, we talked about the Astros earlier, right?
yeah,
Yeah, right now everybody's happy because hey, we're competing for championships. But hey, not long ago I was sitting in Minute Maid, me and three other people watching the Stros get smashed, right? But I mean, you have to develop somewhere. I mean, you look at it from the standpoint of the reason we've been struggling so much these last couple of years, except for the 2017 playoff run, is that we've had nobody come up. Think about it. Our academy has produced two players, Memo and Tyler Derrick. It's not enough. Nowhere near the level it
hey,
should be.
hey, don't forget Eric McHugh.
Who? No, but in all seriousness, I mean, for as much talent that comes out of this city, for as much talent that that is available and within the inner loop, you should have more people coming from the academy. And yeah, of course, we all want to hear about the big sexy name that they're going to bring in as far as players and all that good thing. But the reason why teams could go spend a certain amount on a player is because they have players they bring in. Like you look at the LA Galaxy, for example, right? Yeah, they have money they can go spend or whatever, but they have young players on that team. The Alvarez kid, I think he's 19 years old.
Yeah,
He played.
that
He
was that 19-year-old old thing was just absolutely driven into the ground by the announcers when we played them. I just want to throw that out there. Just like it has been for the Astros and both the Yankees and now the Nationals. That kid's only 22 years old. I can't believe he's only 20. Every inning that kid was up to bat or made a play. Oh, wow, he's only 22 years old. It's just like,
but these
sorry.
no, you good. But these teams, they have young players, but obviously we only focus on the stars, right? You
Sure.
look at New York Red, the New York Red Bulls have been like the most consistent team for the last 5-6 years, right? Now, obviously, yeah, they haven't won MLS Cup, but they won a couple supporter shields. They won, they've had great records and stuff and things of that nature, and they've had players transferred over to European clubs, and they've gotten transfer money because what they develop players. A big club like New York Red Bulls, which philosophy at first was bring in players like Thierry Henry, Juan Pablo, and brain farting here, but yeah, but they used to sign big names, but now they saw that wasn't the way to go.
Oh, you're talking about
That's
Rafa?
only, yeah, there you go.
Sorry,
They
I will always attribute Rafa to the media circus that became the New York Red Bulls when he was there. It was fabulous to watch from afar.
Oh, for sure, but think of the level of consistency and the level of success that New York Red Bulls are having the last 5 years, as opposed to the 5 year or the 4 or 5 years that Henry and Rafa and I can't remember the guy from Australia who was there.
Tim Cahill.
Yeah, there you go, Tim Cahill. Think about it. Yeah, they had that one run to MLS Cup or whatever, but look at the consistency that they've had the last 5-6 years by going and investing in the youth, investing in their academies, bringing up these players, these young players, Tyler Adams, Aaron Long. There's other kids as well. Josie Altidore from back in the days, So,
Yeah. And and that I think is probably the best point is even if you look at like the LA Galaxy right now, sure they have a Zlatan and a Pavone, But guess what? They also have a bunch of players that came out of their academy system. Atlanta United, they had a bunch of players that came out of their USL/academy system. The fact is, if you want to be a competitive team and spend money on top players, you have to have a good basis of players coming in to backfill for depth, because otherwise you're having to spend that money on veteran players either from other leagues or from even within MLS to fill your ranks, and those cost way more money to your salary budget than players that are your homegrowns or players that are coming from your own system or even from the USL level. So I think that's a big thing.
No, let's do a comparison real quick, Sean. If you have, so if I have a player, let's say Memo, right?
Sure.
Memo came up from the academy, homegrown. What's he making, like $60K a year, maybe? I think if that, maybe 70.
Yeah, we'll say 65 to make easy numbers.
Okay, cool. So let's say Memo has a big season this year. Let's say he does about 10 goals. Memo's still fairly young. I think he's 23, 24, somewhere around that area.
Yeah, I think he's 24 this year.
So because he has a good season, it only takes one really good season for other teams to start noticing, especially when you can get a hold of a player like a Memo on the cheap. Let's say a team, say Atlas, just to what we've been following the Dynamo for, and he's fantastic. He's still young. He's developing. He's scoring goals. He's assisting. He's always in the play. He's hustling all the time. We want that kid. A $2 million transfer, which we're thinking, okay, $2 million for Memo because we love Memo so much. We're like, no, but and let's, as opposed to everybody wants to bring in Chicharito to Dynamo, right? You're gonna pay a $10 million transfer fee to bring him.
Not everybody, just so it's clear. Not everybody.
Well, okay, but then what? If you don't win MLS Cup or put trophies in that trophy case while he's here, what good did it really do? You sold shirts, yeah, you filled up the stadium, cool, but there's nothing afterwards. I mean, you can't sell him afterwards. Once he's done, he's done.
Well, and let me add to that too. When you sell a player out of player out of MLS, currently
you don't get the full price.
No, you don't get the full amount back. You get 66% or something. Well, you get the it's a really weird formula on how they come up with it. MLS takes 25%, I think, so you get 3/4 of it technically, but I think only 675 of that can be used on actual player salaries. The rest has to go back to operations. Yeah. That could be staff salaries though. That does count for that. So, it's if we go buy Chicharito for, let's say, I'm going to lowball it, but let's say $12 million in transfer fee, and his salary is whatever it end up being, and we're able to land Chicharito. Sure. It's not going to be $5 million, but sure. Not in MLS.
I mean, you're playing Vela, Jonathan 5-6. I mean,
that's fair. Yeah, but there's no doubt Vela's a better player. Okay, so let's say 4.5. I'll give you 4.5 million for salary. But so that, forget the amount that they're paying for the salary. That transfer fee of $12 million, even if, okay, so let's say he comes in and he just bombs. You're not going to get any more than 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 million for him anywhere. 4.5 million, and you're only keeping 75% of that. I mean, you're out so much money, and sure, you may get 1 or 2 good years out of him, maybe, but if it's not enough to get you an MLS Cup, the investment wasn't worth it. And
no.
And so that's the part of it that I think, unfortunately, a lot of fans don't understand, is that there is a business part of it that has to be taken into account, that unfortunately a lot of people don't take into account.
And trust me, Sean, I've been an advocate to where, like, look, if the Dynamo really want to slume a light on them, they need somebody, right? A name player. I'm not saying which one, because I mean there's so much competition in the city, especially with Astros, Rockets, Texans, all that, right?
Yeah.
But you also got to be smart about it, and you got to be detailed about it, just like the Astros were. Because the Astros, they could have signed big players when they were losing 100 games, but did they? No, they just rolled the wave. They let players develop. The same way that I think that's kind of the approach that Dynamo have to take a little bit. And they don't need to do a full rebuild. Full rebuild. They have players already. We've mentioned this in the past two episodes. There's talent on this team already, you know. So it doesn't have to be a complete rebuild. It might be a little fix up here, a little fix up here, but in that sense, I believe that with Tab now leading the charge and now knowing what direction he kind of want to go, what kind of players he needs, this and that, we have more of a clear vision of what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And the fact that he has such a high IQ and such a high, well-respected resume in developing young players, like I'm not gonna be surprised if during January or December or in off season we're talking about 5 South Americans coming here, 2 Central Americans coming, a couple of young players from that we don't know coming here.
For sure.
And to go back on the comparison between Chicharito and Memo, that whole aspect, we can go as far back as the whole Cuba Torres episode. I think what was rumored we paid 7 mil for him, and we ended up selling him for like 2 mil to Puma. So we had a $5 million loss there. That loss is huge, and there was no return because Kubo didn't put butts in seats. Kubo didn't lead you to MLS Cup. Kubo didn't score for the first 2 years. So that's prime example. But then you also have the example of Albert Elise. You bought him for 2.5 mil from Monterrey, and you have teams in Europe offering you 8, 9, 10 mil. Great. We have both sides of the spectrum, and they want more Albert Elises and less Kubo Torreses.
Well, and to add to that real quick, there's a certain way to acquire players that doesn't require you to necessarily put down a huge transfer fee right out of the gate. It allows the team to be smart, determine if they really want the player or if, maybe that player isn't quite the right fit. And that's what they did with Elise, which was the option to buy. And it's, a loan with an option to buy. And that's becoming much more commonplace in MLS. We are seeing some teams just straight transfer players in, but we're seeing those players that are kind of those on the cusp players that have plenty of raw talent or have, high talent ceilings, but maybe they're still developing a little bit here and there. They're coming in on loans and loans to buy. And then if the MLS team determines it, then they go ahead and buy them at the end of the loan. And it's working. I mean, we're seeing the overall talent level of MLS improve for sure. But here's a question for you, Mark. I want you to think about this long and hard because it's really important and, maybe dive into it a little bit. I don't know. But Tab Ramos coming in, how does that affect a player that we just have a rumor that dropped earlier this week that from the Honduran media that Romel Kyoto is going to re-sign with the Dynamo, and then the Dynamo have the intent to transfer him or trade him to another MLS club. First of all, what do you think about that? And second of all, how does Tab Ramos coming in affect a player like Kyoto?
So, first of all, I think myself, you, and everybody, before we knew what the whole deal was, we were kind of surprised Kyoto with the Dynamo any kind of contact anymore. He's technically a free player, after December 31st, he's a free player. He can go anywhere willy nilly. So it's kind of interesting per se because I wonder if Tab discussed anything with Matt Jordan and the front office, about what the situation was, what happened. I wonder if he talked to any of the other players about it. I mean, because Kyoto, for all the stupid stuff that he's done and the way he's acted and been a diva. I mean, when he was on, he was on. Let's not forget. I think myself and you have mentioned it in the past episodes that Kyoto was the one that was started off faster than Elise. So that being said, the re-signing of him was a real interesting thing in the sense of, well, what are they going to do with him? How would he fit with Ramos' system? And he could he could, but do you still want to deal with that headache? I mean, because you've seen on Twitter all the dislikes on him, all the negative attention towards him. Not just this year with the whole suspension thing and practicing away from the team, but also from last season with the whole revenge porn thing or whatever. Do you want a player like that around in the clubhouse still? I don't think so. So like so for my standpoint, if they get something for him, like I think I mentioned on Twitter, I would just want some Gantam and probably a better allocation spot for an order or an international spot. He has a green card, so he won't take up a national international spot if he does get traded within the MLS. And maybe some other coach can bring out what he was, and don't have to and deal with that headache. But honestly, I'm past Kyoto. Um, I'm sure that Ramos and Jordan are going to do their due diligence, and Ramos is going to have a conversation with him because you just have to. It's one of those things where the past is the past, and this is a new regime. So let's see if we can kind of make this work, or if we can't, then let's do what's best for both sides.
Sure, and he has expressed a desire to go to another team before. That happened in the preseason last year. Um,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't surprise me if they signed him and tried to trade him. My concern is if they re-sign him, that is a signal to everybody that they intend to trade him, and they're not going to get back value for him, not great value anyways. So I'm kind of in the same boat. I would be content if we trade him and we get a international slot or we get an allocation order bump, especially with Tab Ramos, because as I mentioned before, he's going to attract former players and players that know him. And there are players in the allocation list that would be available just simply because he is our coach now.
But speaking on that, yeah, like I agree. I don't think we're gonna get much for, and obviously, we should. Because there's this key, there's there's up and down. You also got to think about this league is expanding. Next year, Nashville and Miami come in, right? So there's more player positions available. The pool of players is going to grow. Shape of Kyoto dominating games. So it just takes one or two teams to say, you know what, hey, we'll give you this, and then another team saying, okay, we'll give you this, and then you got yourself a little bit of a quote unquote bidding war. But obviously you're not going to get anything of significance. But something's better than nothing, I guess, for a player who technically could leave on the free after this year.
Sure, and just to wet your whistle, let me read off a few names that are youth or have been prior youth players in the U.S. men's national team. Junior Flores, who's currently out of contract. You've got Julian Green, who's playing over in Germany in the second division in Bundesliga. You have Manny Perez, who's playing for Celtic. You have Rubio Rubin, who's playing for Club Tijuana. And then there's a host of other players that have played for him. DeAndre Yedlin, Josh Sargent, Tim Ream, Matt Miazga, Aaron Johansson. The list goes on. Jeff Cameron is a player that has familiarity with him, who's currently playing for QPR. That may not be updated, actually. I don't think he's playing for QPR anymore. No, he is. He's still playing for QPR. But I'm just saying, and these are all players that are subject to the allocation order. We currently are in third in the allocation order. We are behind San Jose and Minnesota United currently. When you add in expansion teams, we'll be fourth or fifth. Why this is important is because bringing in players via allocation is one of the best ways to get proven talent from abroad. You can still sign up to DP contracts and all those methods and mechanisms that are in MLS. for paying the player. But it's a good way to get those players that maybe other clubs would have initially had a shot at to ahead of you to begin with. There's no doubt that if a team like LA Galaxy wanted, say Jeff Cameron, that Jeff Cameron probably would take the opportunity right now. And so what I'm trying to get at with that, though, is by bringing a Tab Ramos into the mix, Houston actually becomes a destination for players now. And it as much as it is about the city, it's about the club. It's about the coach. We have talked repeatedly so often, not just on this show, but in Discord and Twitter and even on Facebook, about how players don't want to come play for the Houston Dynamo. And I have a firm belief, and have believed this for a while, that Wilmer Cabrera is a big reason for that. Now, some of that has to do with the fact that ownership is not necessarily going to put forth a lot of money, that the previous regime of Chris Canetti and others were not the best front office, and they wouldn't necessarily support the team in the best of ways. But guess what? That is history now. With Tab Ramos, as the guy in charge, he can address those concerns directly. The other great thing about that, though, is moving even beyond that, you also have the opportunity of leveraging Tab Ramos's network, which we did talk about. But the opportunity to just bring those players in, that makes a player like Romel Kyoto expendable, in my opinion. And it makes it worthwhile if you can get that bump in the allocation order, or you can get the international slot, or you can get, whatever else allocation money you need in order to bring the player in. Whatever metric it is, or mechanism it is, it opens the door for Matt Jordan to make a big move, or at the very least, a bigger move than they've made up to this point. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I agree completely. I mean, and let's just talk about Kyoto. They still got to go run down the whole team to see who's going to stay and who's going to go, who's on contract, who's out of contract, right? And then they're going to see what players that don't fit the scheme, and they'll either trade them or sell them or whatever they can do. And then you still got the big elephants in the room.
I hope they trade him to a expansion team. Sorry, just wanted to throw that out there.
No, yeah. And then you still got the two big elephants in the room, Elise and Manotas.
Yeah.
Are they going to be part of the team next year, or are they going to be sold? I mean, what's the plan there? Because the thing is, those two players are, if they're here next year, you're expecting those two players to be your captains, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because those two players are going to be the scoring, the assisting. They're going to be the whole attitude of the attacking option of the Houston Dynamo. But if they don't come back and you sell these players off, you're going to make a nice little chunk of change back for these players. And now where do you go on with that? Do you have different mechanisms now, the allocation order? Now, the players that you named off, they're a wee bit old, like, Tim Reams and Jeff Cameron. Obviously, I don't think you're going to be paying VP money for Jeff Cameron and Tim Reams or whatever. But those players are good players. Those can be your next, like, what Beasley was to them. Leadership.
Exactly.
Somebody who's been around, who knows how to be a professional. Somebody who isn't afraid to tell at least, hey man, straighten up. Stop being a dick on the pitch. Stop being a crybaby or whoever's acting up.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, the whole Boniak thing is that's out the way. Figueroa, come on. He's 37, 38. We can't expect too much from there. We need new backbones. We need new leadership that isn't afraid to stand up in front of these guys and tell them, hey, and let them know when they're messing up.
Yeah, I mean,
Tab has those connections.
Exactly. Well, and not only that, the one thing I think that Tab doesn't get enough credit for is his ability to find player leaders through working with the players. His teams have had multiple leaders on him. It was never just a single leader, and so his ability to find those leaders from even within the current crop of U.S. men's national youth team players shows that he's going to be able to do that with the Dynamo. And it's the one thing, or one of the many things, but one of the primary things that we've asked for quite a while as well, which is having an on-field leader, an on-pitch leader that is able to, really take the brunt of, the blame when crap happens on the pitch, but also is willing to get in people's faces and say, you know what, we got to correct this. This is not okay. And if a player is slacking off, like, I'm going to throw it out there, Kyoto, then, it's a player that's willing and has enough clout to go up to Kyoto and say, look, man, you got to put in some effort here, or I'm going to have coach is going to sub you off, or we're not, you're not going to get to play next match, whatever it is. But have the clout to be able to go up to a player and say, look, dude, cut it out. Let's get this done and have earned that respect. Here's the other thing. Tab Ramos coached Christian Ramirez.
Yep.
I mean, match made in heaven. I'm already a huge fan of Christian Ramirez. And the guy has shown that he can be a leader on the pitch. He has shown that he can be that guy to up his game and to push other players to be better. And let's. Go ahead.
I think the thing about Christian Ramirez that he's gonna have a full training camp of a full year now, with the team, so they'll have that much more respect for him. And he's made it known what his ambitions are with his club. He wants to be able to return to the United States national team. He wants to be a regular on that team. The World Cup is not that far away. That's motivation within himself. When you have a player who can find motivation within himself and to inspire himself to be the best that he can, that leaks to other players. And then if he's producing on the field, on the pitch, then he has that much more ammunition to go up to whoever, Kyoto, and tell him, hey man, you're effing up, man. Let's get it together. Come on, man. We're here as a team. We're trying to win. Let's do it. Stop with the whining. Stop with the crying. Stop with with whatever the officials, the calls are not going my way. Not everybody gets calls, but I'm glad you brought up Christian Ramirez, because I think he's going to be a real benefactor of this Tab Ramos along with Memo.
Well, and I'm going to double up on this, because you also have a player that not only does he fit perfectly for Tab Ramos's preferred style of play and tactics, but he's a player that could seriously benefit from a year or two under Tab Ramos, and that's Mauro Manotas. And we've already seen how good Mauro and Christian can be together. If we get just 1 year out of the two of them together in a partnership, I'm sold. That's all I need. Like, that's the excitement level I need right there. That's what's going to get me fired up and hyped up.
I still need a 10.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, I still need a 10 as well. But having those two paired up top,
I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's butter, man. We haven't had that level of quality up top in a long time, and we finally had it for 3 or 4 matches. But on top of that, you're adding a coach that's actually able to utilize and leverage that. I mean, it's a dream come true. I'll be honest with you. Like, we haven't had that since Dom.
I mean, you're right. I mean, there's no reason that Christian Ramirez and Mauro Manotas together shouldn't have 30 goals between them, those two.
Oh yeah,
There's
easily.
Especially, I mean, what's the MLS schedule? 36 games, 34, 36 games.
Yeah.
But the way MLS is played nowadays, like, the field's open, the pitch is open. Teams are playing wide. They're playing quick. They're counterattacking, going quick. And if, like I said, the thing is that if we can find somebody to get them the ball, they'll be scoring. They'll score easily. When Mauro was having his big breakthrough season last year, Tomas was on point. I mean, Tomas ended up with like 16 assists that year.
Yep.
Something crazy that year.
Yep.
But he was finding Mauro, and so was Elise, and so was Kyoto. When the ball is flying and it's finding your center forwards or your strikers, it makes life so much more easier. And then when you have strikers of quality like Ramirez or Mauro, goals come in flashes, easy. That's why you have players like Joseph Martinez scoring as much as they do. They have players that feed them the ball. Joseph Martinez, if he was on the Dynamo and Mauro was on the Atlanta United, we would be talking about how prolific Mauro Manotas is. I don't. There's not really that much of a big difference in talent wise between the two players. Now, Joseph has a better team around him than Mauro, so obviously that's why he's scoring the goals that he scores, having the wide open space that he scores because there's other players that they have to worry about. I'm just saying, man, if they can find somebody to feed them and take the pressure off of them and make it easier for them to score these goals, I could easily see Mauro scoring over 20, Ramirez scoring over 15, or even over 20, and then there you go.
And of course,
What more do
that's
you want?
yeah, and that's all predicated, of course, on Morrow sticking around and not being sold off to
But yeah,
another team over in
but
Europe.
but even if Mauro was sold off and Ramirez stayed, I mean, Ramirez is a 20 plus goal scorer on a good team, right? With players feeding him.
Hmm.
You see how well he plays in the box. He holds the ball real good, real nicely.
Yeah,
He makes the plays. He's an unselfish player. If he needs to make that extra pass to make a goal easier for somebody else, he's willing to make that pass. So Ramirez is that type of player where he can have 15, 16 goals, but he can also have 8, 9 assists.
yeah. No, I mean, and that's the thing, and why I like that partnership so much with Ramirez and Morrow is because they were feeding each other. You know, it wasn't just coming in from the wing, and it wasn't just coming in from from Tomas. They weren't having to rely on that service. They were creating opportunities for each other, and they were unselfish sometimes to a fault at times, but they were unselfish. Um,
Yeah.
so Callow says, we already talked about this a little bit, but he said, I'd hope for someone with more experience. Ramos really doesn't have it, and it's undeniable. Senior assistant and only youth experience. You're right, but at the same time, this is the Dynamo. We weren't going to land a Diego Alonso or a Alfonso Mohammed. Is that his name?
No, Antonio. Antonio.
Okay, I knew it started with an A. I couldn't remember. Antonio Mohammed. We weren't going to land a Tata Martinez or a Tico Ferretti. We just weren't.
So let me play devil's advocate then, I guess. This is the reason why I didn't want Tab. Okay, and like I said, I don't want I want to make it clear. I'm excited about the hiring. Don't get me wrong, but this is the reason for me being against it. He's coached kids. He's coached players that are coming up. They're hungry. They know what opportunities they have in front of them. They know what they can provide for their families, for themselves. They have a lot of ambition. These players that he's coached in the youth team. It's a lot different from coaching professional players who've been in leagues and around the world and played professional soccer for 5, 6, 7 years. It's a different animal, and that's one of the things that worried me about Tab. I mean, even though he is well respected, don't get me wrong. I mean, respect is given as respect is taken. And for all the respect that he has for what he's done in the youth level, obviously he hasn't done it in the professional level. And when you got a player that let's use Kyoto for example, since he's the lame duck out here. When you have a player like, let's say, Kyoto, who has diva like tendencies and acts out and his private life is out there and it's not for good things. It's kind of hard to deal with that. Along with, hey, we got to deal with Portland this week. What's going on here? When you're relying on a player like that, who you would think, hey, you're a professional, act like one. Not a lot of people act like professionals, even though they're professionals. It's kind of hard to tell a 20-year-old old man like, hey, act right, man. If they're not acting right and they're a grown man, what makes you think that you're gonna make them act right? It's not like coaching a 14 or 15-year-old kid that you can tell him, hey, you can punish him and be like, hey, you know what? Because of that, you don't play the next game. You're out. You're gonna go play with the reserves. There's a lot of things that you gotta take into consideration when you're doing professionals, because obviously there's money involved. There's endorsements. There's whatever. There's a lot of things that are involved with dealing with a professional player, and especially one that isn't professional.
Sure, and I get that frustration. I get that concern. I get that, that concern. I get that concern. My, I think, response to that is pretty simple, and that's been he's never been given the chance to show it. He's only ever been given that opportunity to deal with youth. And at some point, those master coaches, those coaches that are so good that they can transcend and transition from one talent level to the next, pretty seamlessly, those guys have to get a chance somewhere. And,
for sure.
I get the concern. I know you're playing devil's advocate, but I want to counter it and say, if this is his opportunity and he comes in and he proves that he's good enough, then instead of it being he didn't have the experience, since we were the ones to give him the opportunity to show that he was good enough. And I think that is, we're going to hear that over and over, is he able to really take the team where they need to go? Is he going to be able to control the personalities and manage the personalities and the egos? And is he going to be able to deal with senior team players as opposed to youth players? And I think that I get that, and I understand where that's coming from. But I also think that's putting the cart before the horse. That's not even, that's a area of concern. And I get why it's being vocalized. It's not just been vocalized by you, and it's not just been vocalized by Callow. It's been vocalized by a few people at this point. But at the same time, we're only going to get what we can get. We're not going to, like I said, we're not going to get a Tico Ferretti. We're just not. It's not going to happen. And so we're not going to get a proven coach.
Well, see, the thing is, okay, so if they hit a home run with Tab, let's be realistic. If this goes well and Tab proves to be a great coach and he makes the playoffs and hopefully gets us a MLS Cup or some kind of silverware, he's gone in 2 or 3 years. He would have that much hype behind him, right? And to use a lateral example of this situation, you can, actually two. Pep Guardiola and Luis Enrique both coached Barcelona B before they coached any professional team. Before they coached Barcelona, right?
Yeah.
And when they were hired, people were thinking like, bro, wait a second, you're gonna bring the developmental coach to coach the greatest player in the world and Neymar and all these other guys? Like, what? But like I said, if he was given a chance, he made the best out of it. He possibly coached the greatest team ever. But yeah, like I said, I hope it goes more toward the Pep Guardiola route than him flaming out and then it just didn't work here. And then we lost another 3 years.
Sure, and but any coach you go with is going to have the propensity to be either a flame out or a success, or somewhere in between. Any of those three.
But I think with getting a coach of quote unquote pedigree, I understand what you're saying. We're never going to get like a Ferretti, whatever, because at the end of the day, this is a financial thing, right? So maybe they did have contact with Diego Alonso, but maybe they weren't agreeing on the financial aspect of it, because it could be very well, because Mexico pays well. Because there's a reason why there's so much retreading coaches in Mexico, because they pay well. They pay their coaches well. On the contrary to what you've been seeing as of late with Veracruz and not paying their players, but they pay their coaches, they pay their players well. That's why there's not a lot of transfers outside of Mexico, and that's why a lot of coaches don't go outside of Mexico. Mm-hmm. But when they do, it's for a nice lump sum of change.
But even then, it's not a guarantee of success.
It's
a perfect example, an easy example for me right now, is Almeida with San Jose. I mean, just because a coach has that pedigree, it's not a guarantee of anything in MLS. And the reason I have to say that is because I think that we overvalue that experience, whether it's in other leagues or with other teams or whatever. Another good example of that is a Jason Kreis. The guy is about to get hired by RSL as their general manager and their coach. And the question that has to be asked is RSL really building anything for the future by bringing in Jason Kreis? And I think the answer to that is no. They're really not. Look, Jason Kreis is not a bad coach. He's not a bad manager. But he's not the guy. He's not going to be the guy to get him over that hump. And so for all this talk of, I'm going to use Callow's own words and I'm going to throw it back in his face. There's a million free agent coaches with both youth and senior experience. If anything, I'd say we cast the net too narrow. I would argue that, we can only cast the net as wide as the net is able to be cast. It's MLS. We're not going to attract the best coaches in the world. Now, there are clubs in MLS that might be able to do that, but we are the Houston Dynamo. Forget everything you think about the Houston Dynamo as a passionate fan of the club. At the end of the day, we're not a top team in this league. We're not going to attract the best teams and coaches in the world. We're not going to attract the best coaches in MLS. But what we did attract... No, go ahead.
Are you saying we're West Ham?
We're what now?
Are you saying we're West Ham of the MLS?
We're the QPR of MLS.
Oh, wow.
I'm just being honest with you. We are. I mean, and that's okay, because if you bring in the right coach, and I think Tab Ramos is the right coach for this team, for this club, for this system, for these players, then you can have success. And you can have success in a way that's consistent and can create an environment and a culture that exceeds well beyond his time here. And I agree with you. If he comes in and he tears it up in the first 2 to 3 seasons he's here, he's gone. And that very well may be as the U.S. men's national team, coach in 3 years. And I'm okay with that, because that means that Tab has set up a system that is successful. That means at that point that he will have set up for success the Dynamo moving forward. That means he will have helped build that pipeline out to be stronger and better. He will be the Paul Holliker, if you will, of the Dynamo senior team. And I'm okay with that. I'm not expecting this to be a 5-10 year project. I'm expecting 2 to 3 seasons. And I'm okay with that as long as there is success, but I'm also okay with that as long as there's success in the full organization, across the board, and not just with the Dynamo senior team. I need to see success in terms of players coming in from RGV that are becoming successful as MLS players. I need to see players coming from the academy that become successful MLS players. Go ahead.
So since you brought up the academy and RGV, what's your take on this? A couple of days back, or maybe even a week ago, or I'm not sure. There was like Twitter chatter about RGV separating from the Dynamo and doing their own thing, and us maybe building a homegrown USL team where it's located so close to the team, maybe even in Houston.
I've had this discussion with Edson previously on before, and I'll say the same thing that I've told him, and that is, it's not going to happen unless the Dynamo want it to happen. It has to come from the Dynamo, and here's why. It doesn't matter how much Cantu, who's the owner of RGV, wants it to happen. He doesn't have the pockets deep enough to afford the salaries of the players that are currently with RGV. He doesn't have the salary to pay the technical staff that's currently with RGV. All of those are hired and managed by the Dynamo. They are paid by the Dynamo. The salaries of RGV players and RGV staff are paid by the Dynamo. They are not paid by RGV's owner. So for all this talk of RGV wanting to go independent, it comes from their fans, because they're tired of seeing their players being taken by the Dynamo, brought into the Dynamo senior team, and then spending a week training and then being sent back to RGV for a match and not even getting a chance to train with RGV before their match. And frankly,
what do you think? No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, frankly, I don't fault them for being upset at that. And it bothers me as a Dynamo fan that we're doing that, because that's not conducive to the growth and development of the player. That only creates a situation where the player is put into a position where he can't be successful. it's that much
So
harder for the player to succeed.
so obviously that's the RGV fan outtake,
Perspective.
right?
Yeah.
Perspective. So let's flip it from like the Houston Dynamo fan perspective, which I am. Like I'm not gonna say I'm knowledgeable like Edson or even yourself about RGV, right? But as a fan of the Dynamo and a fan of soccer clubs around the world, and from what I've seen and from what I've known from like growing up in soccer communities and all that other stuff, to be able to look across the pitch, whatever pitch you're practicing on, and see the first team, and to be able to be a couple steps away from them, or to where like if I have a question about something, I can go ask one of those players, or I can have a daily communication with those players. That's something that's not available for these guys. It's one of those things where if you're gonna make RGV work, for example, I believe RGV shouldn't have any players over 24. Once you're over, if you're over 24 years old in RGV, you're not gonna make it. I'm sorry. You know, go play in the indoor soccer league or whatever. Go do whatever you gotta go do. But if you're over 24 years old and you're still playing NWSL or USL or whatever SL league that you're playing in, you're not gonna make it. It's the harsh truth. I'm sorry. Now, with that being said, RGV, whatever players are allocated to that team, whether it be the super draft players, right, the young foreign players that we bring in, or whatever young foreign players they sign that they think that, hey, they can possibly turn into something. Those players should be kept there the whole year. Only brought up in emergency cases where, like, if you have a numerous amount of injuries, just to be able to field the players necessary to be for the game, right? Or or any other situation like that. But this whole moving back and forth, moving back and forth, moving back and forth to get playing time, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Like the whole thing with Alejandro Mayor, I'm using him as an example because I feel that this whole last year was a complete disaster for him in his career because it just was. Wilmer or Matt Jordan or whoever or his agent or even the player himself should have just been like, look, if you're still wanting to develop me, then hey, let me be in RGV. Let me get the whole season in RGV, right? And let me play there every day, train there every day, and just and grow. And then if you think that I've grown enough to make the senior team where you're gonna actually use me, then bring me up. Like the whole Michael Salazar thing to me, honestly, was a bit of a cover up because you had injuries in Kyoto, you had you had obviously international duties and all that good stuff, but he wasn't accustomed to playing the style that Dynamo are playing. He's trying to play RGV style. The fact that you have two teams under the same umbrella playing two different styles, it's ludicrous to me. Barcelona B plays like Barcelona. They might not play at the same tempo, but they play the same formation, the same everything, the same characteristic. The Barca way or whatever, or the Arsenal way or the Tottenham way or whatever. These developmental teams need to be playing the style that the senior teams are playing, and I think that that's better suited when you have the team right there in your backyard because they can play against each other during practice. They can they can see where they're at. Me, if I was a 17-year-old center back and I was going up against Mauro Manotas, I would want to see where how I stack up against Mauro Manotas, a 20 goal scorer in MLS in practice. But can I? No, because why? I'm in the valley. You know.
So, okay, I'm going to address a couple of things and then I'm going to offer what my solution would be if I was GM, and I think you'd actually like this solution. And this, I think, would satisfy both contingencies. But number one, you mentioned Fuenmayor, and why didn't he, as a player, his agent or whatever, say, hey, if you don't think that I'm ready for senior team experience, to play for the Dynamo, then, why don't you give me time down with RGV so I can at least get game time and be match fit and practice, etc. And I agree with you, but here's why a player wouldn't do that, especially when you have a coach like, I don't know, Wilmer Cabrera. Wilmer Cabrera is known as a coach that holds grudges. And he's known as a coach that if you question his decisions, you will never see the senior team. And so, knowing that, if you have the opportunity to go speak to Wilmer Cabrera, you're probably going to bite your tongue on that. Because, sure, you may get sent down to RGV, but there's never a chance you're going to see Dynamo minutes as long as Wilmer's coach. And so, I can't blame Fuenmayor for that. I can blame Wilmer Cabrera for that. I can blame Davey for waiting as long as he did to get Fuenmayor involved. But I can't blame Fuenmayor for that, for the last 2 or 3 seasons, for that matter. Second thing you mentioned was the Barca style and way, referring to how the A and B team play the same style. Technically, the RGV and the Dynamo do play very similar styles. They try to. That's the goal, is to have the same style and play at RGV and even at Brazos Valley Cavalry, as well as the Dynamo senior team. The problem that we had this year when Michael Salazar was called up and played under, Wilmer Cabrera, is Cabrera played him out of position. The position he played with RGV was not the position he played 90% of the time when he was playing with the Dynamo senior team. And you had a coach that when he put Memo on the pitch for the first time, I'm sure he did it with Michael Salazar, he told Memo, go run. That's all he told Memo. When you have a coach that's not giving you direction and you're coming from an organization in a position where you're getting direction, it's very hard to figure it out. You're expecting a player to just figure it out on his own, and no player, except for the very best elite players, have ever just figured it out on their own. They've always had some help, whether it be from another player or another coach. So, those two things.
I agree with what you're saying. No, trust me. I'm not backing off of what.
I know. I was I was just giving you some education. I wasn't. To be clear, I don't disagree with anything you had to say, with the exception of the Fuenmayor thing. I'm going to defend him to my death because I don't think that situation was even remotely his fault.
No, of course not. The whole Wilmer variable it's a huge variable. It's a huge difference.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
I totally agree with that.
So now let me move into what I would do if I was GM, and I think you'll like this solution. Now, this requires a little bit of money from the ownership, and I think they might be willing to do this. If it was me, I would have RGV and the Dynamo practice here in Houston every week, Monday through Friday, except for midweek games where there's a midweek match, or weeks where there's a midweek match, whether it's an RGV midweek match or a Dynamo midweek match, because you're not going to be able to bust those players back in time for them to be able to make the match comfortably and have the rest needed, etc. So if you do that, though, even for let's say 75% of the season, you're able to have both teams practice together. That's already 75% more than you're getting now. So you're having both teams practice together. You get coaching, all the coaches are able to watch the same players. They're able to play the same style. They're able to play against each other. So your players at RGV are able to show what they're able to do against the Dynamo's best players, and they're able to have that opportunity to say, you know what, if you show well in practice against these Dynamo players, we'll maybe consider giving you an opportunity with the senior team and keeping you here for this weekend. And so,
okay.
That at least it's a middle ground. It's not the perfect solution. I would still much rather have a Houston-based USL team that's basically a MLS2 team for the Dynamo. But if that's not going to happen because the Dynamo still think the RGV situation is a tenable relationship, which I think it can be, then that's the best solution because it's going to provide RGV a better overall product on the pitch. It's going to provide the Dynamo a better youth product on the pitch in terms of what they're able to bring in. And it's going to provide the coaches the opportunity to actually coach both teams together.
See, the thing, I like what you're saying, but I'm also on that standpoint where, like, if we're trying to get to the level of FC Dallas, New York Red Bulls, Atlanta United, guess what the common thing about those teams are? They play in the same city. They play in the same facilities. They play in the same training grounds. They play against each other.
That's not true. Seattle's don't, but that's neither here nor there. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
So for example, you bring in a manager like Tab Ramos, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
has this huge resume in developing youth, right? What's to say that he can't come out of his office and go watch the RGV play or practice, and just watch, see them developing firsthand, right there and then throughout the season. Because one thing is practicing during the off season or practicing during the preseason and stuff like that. But when they're practicing for a game, the senior coach to be able to just walk down the sidewalk and go to the development pitch and watch them play, and be able to see, oh, you know what, so and so is, wow, he's really out there hustling. Oh man, I love the way he commands the ball. But he can't do that, man. Because I mean, as much I'm sure it's a busy week with video and training and coming up with the formation and plan for a senior coach to be able to go down to RGV for a day and go see the team practice. You know, it's something that I think the Dynamo in the future, and hopefully in the near future, needs to really consider and just let RGV go. And just take the L on that, and just, you know what, we tried it. It didn't really work to our benefits because, like I said, who really has come up from RGV? Aside from Memo, like, who really has come up from RGV, stuck on the Dynamo and played for the Dynamo?
Hey now,
Nobody.
don't trash talk Kevin Garcia, bro. The OG legit KG, okay?
And then like I said, I'm not as familiar with the players in RGV as you are, but like what's their ages?
They're
You know?
almost the attack is almost entirely under 25 years of age.
But okay, but think about it. Those players are on the same age as Mauro, Albert, Memo, and Tomas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you switching any one of those four players for any of those four players in RGV?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. So if they haven't made it and you know that you're not gonna switch it, then carry on, or do something with them, or find if another team is interested and get something for them and go younger.
No,
It's one.
I agree, and the only reason I'm going to stop you is because what we run into is a mindset, and what RGV was sold on from a fan perspective is they were sold on the idea of a team that was going to be competitive in USL year in and year out. And what they've had is instead it's a development club, it's a farm team for the Dynamo. And I don't have a problem with it being a farm team, but your RGV fans do. So
Yeah.
I want to see RGV not necessarily go independent, but I would like to see the Dynamo take the not the ambition, but take the opportunity and start a Houston-based USL club as well. Let RGV be that bridge between. I mean, you've got the Brazos Valley Cavalry, which is supposed to be your fresh out of the academy team. It's your PSL or PDL team, which they're in League One, I think, or whatever the bottom league is in USL. But it's and they've been very good, whereas RGV has not. And go ahead.
The thing was, Sean, I'm sorry. RGV was sold to RGV like the Vipers were sold to RGV with the Rockets.
Yes, exactly.
So for those who don't know, the Vipers are like the minor league team for the Rockets. But the thing about the Vipers is they're competitive. They're winning championships. They're the reigning champion of that league. I think they've won the championship 3 or 4 times already now. So that's a win-win, right? The development team is winning championships. You got players coming back and forth from the Rockets into Rio Grande Valley that are contributing. Win-win, right? But the thing with that formula with the Rockets is that a player can make a much bigger impact on a 5-player team than on an 11-player team. and it's tough when you have different mechanisms to bring in players. So, for example, let's take I don't, I don't know who's a good young player from Argentina. Chewy.
Chewy Enriquez. Yeah, let's go with Chewy.
Okay, so let's go with Chewy, right? Chewy, he's up and coming. He's budding. But then you sign somebody who plays the same position, and you pay money to bring that player in. Guess what? Chewy ain't coming up.
Yep. Yep.
That's the problem. The thing is, if you have a special player on RGV or Valverde or an academy or wherever, you have to bring that player up. You have to do it, and not stunt their growth by signing somebody ahead of them. If you sign somebody ahead of them, it's because you don't think highly of them.
Yeah, you don't you
And
don't
and
you don't think of them enough to be a starter in MLS.
exactly. And if you don't think of them that way, then why are you still wasting your time with them?
Well, and
You
another
know?
another difference that is provided to the Vipers and why they can be successful as a farm team compared to the Toros is because when you have a Vipers player that's called up to the Rockets, they can get 5 to 10 minutes a game, and that's considered sufficient for a young player. Whereas you can't really do that with the Dynamo because you only have a limited number of substitutions. With the Rockets, you have essentially unlimited substitutions throughout the game.
Yeah,
So you can
yeah.
rest the player. The player doesn't have to be able to go a full, 48 minutes. The player can only go 5 minutes here or there, and that's sufficient for them. With the Dynamo,
But
a
what?
player coming up, they have to be able to go at least 20 to 30 minutes.
So let's go back. Let's go back to using Fred Manior as an example, right?
Sure.
So in that example, that parallel example would be, hey, you know what, Fred Manior, you're gonna go play the whole game at RGV, and then you're gonna come back and you're gonna be our first substitute for defense. That would be the more parallel aspect of that whole scenario, right? If Alejandro's primary spot was the first defensive substitution. So as a first defensive substitution on a normal game gets usually about 15, 20 minutes unless something crazy happens where like, somebody gets an injury or yellow, right?
Yep.
So if he's a budding player where Firmino is what, 22 years old, 22, 23, and he's playing 90 minutes at RGV and then he's playing 15 to 20 minutes at MLS, I, that's great. We can do like the whole thing with Chewy. With Chewy's or or he's a winger. So if they thought enough of him to where like, you know what? Yeah, Chewy's gonna be the winger for RGV. He's gonna play his 75 to 80 minutes or whatever, or they'll go the whole night. But then he's gonna be on our bench for the Dynamo games as well, and he's gonna come off as that special fast guy. Like if we need a goal, we need some speed up top. He might not be our first option, attacking option, but if this scenario pops up, he's gonna play. He's gonna play 10, 15 minutes. That's fine. You have a distinct uh, purpose for that player, and then they're getting their minutes, they're getting developed, and they're playing, and they're seeing the benefits of playing for the first team as opposed to playing for the development team, and seeing what they need to do to try to stay with that development, to try to stay with the first team.
Agreed. I think one of my biggest frustrations has been when the Dynamo have called a player up, whether signing them to an MLS contract and then having them with the senior team is if they got minutes, it was really sparing minutes. And that's okay. But then they weren't getting the opportunity to go back to RGV for a couple of weeks to get those extra, playing time. They were
They were just
just
sitting there.
they were just riding the bench. And like you said, if you're going to call a player up, you're telling that player, we think you're good enough to at least get minutes in MLS. And that has to be the benchmark. The benchmark should not be we're calling a player up because we need somebody to sit on the bench. It needs to be that we think you're good enough to at least get 10 to 15 minutes on the pitch. And if
And, I, and
and that doesn't have to be consistent. You don't have to do it every match, but I need to at least see it 3 or 4 matches, over a 10 match span. At the very least, I'd rather see it 5 or 6 matches over a 10 match span. But and if you're not able to get them those minutes, then within 2 to 3 weeks, you need to send that player back to RGV so that they can get those minutes with RGV. Not hold the
yeah,
player essentially ransom. That's what frustrates me is we hold those players ransom.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at the chat, Callow's saying that, you can move the RGV assets to Sugarland, which I'm totally for. I mean, we have Sugarland, we have Katy, we have all these subdivisions outside of Houston that can support a team. But the thing is, I'm not even worried about the attendance to go see the developmental team, because for all of us who we watch soccer outside of the MLS, right? For well, most of us, I hope do. Manchester United's U23 team, they probably have 100 people watching that match, if that. Liverpool, whoever, Arsenal, whoever. Those U23 teams, they have no attendance. They don't care about that. It's about playing. It's about getting on the field, getting on the pitch, and playing. I don't care if we put the RGV's team in Sugarland and play them in the Sugarland Skeeter Stadium or wherever, and there's only 150 people there. I don't care about that. I'm not. They're not there for. We're not there to make money off of merch. They should. I don't know why RGV is RGV Toros anyways. They should be RGV Dynamo. Everything should be Dynamo aligned. In my opinion, but in the same sense, like if we brought them over and put them in Sugarland or wherever, it gives the first team coach in this instance, Tab, the opportunity to go see firsthand. Hey, you know what? Chewy is killing it out here, and you know what? My Kyoto, for prime example, this Kyoto situation. You know what? I'm tired of Kyoto. I'm gonna give Chewy this opportunity, but but you can't do that because you're not watching him play.
Yep.
Because he's in RGV and you're in Houston. You can only depend so much on what the coach from RGV is saying. Obviously, he's going to try to up his players because he himself is trying to be known as a developmental coach who can bring the best out of coaches because he wants future coaching opportunities in his career. Obviously, you know.
Sure.
So I mean, it's one of those things where if I'm the head coach of the Dynamo, and I can walk down the sidewalk and go watch my U23 squad, and you know what? I'm having a little bit of issue on my defensive back. Man, I see a center back that kid right there is killing it. You know what? I'm gonna give him. He's hungry. I know he's hungry. These young players are hungry, especially him knowing coming from the youth aspect of things. He knows these young players are hungry, and they're willing to go out there and do whatever needs to be done to get that opportunity. You know, and I know we've been sticking a lot on from Mayor, but think of another player, Ronaldo Pena. What happened to that guy? You know, like that he just fell off the face of the earth. I mean, yeah, I know he's had injuries, but damn, I mean, that guy, he came in with so much with the hype, and obviously, he has the name Ronaldo and all that stuff. Whatever, I think that's part of the kind of the little hype mimic machine thing behind it. But still, like he plays in his U21 national team for Venezuela. So this is a player obviously that has talent that the Dynamo invested in because he's young. They want to develop him, and hopefully he in the future becomes the center forward for the senior team in Venezuela. And then you know what? You got yourself there a transfer. But you're gonna put Michael Salazar in front of him. You're gonna put well, now obviously you got to put Christian Ramirez in front of him, and other stuff like that. But we're losing players left and right because we're not having or we don't have an organized structure of what we're trying to do with these players, because we're letting players, I guess, cross each other instead of having your senior players and let's say, for example, Mauro and Christian, your two strikers, and then having somebody like Ronaldo who's the backup to them, and then having somebody like 18, 19 years old that's up and coming that can play 2 years down the line. We don't have nobody like that. We don't have nothing like that. We have all these guys, same age group, all bunched up in the same position.
I mean,
So
yeah, it's you're not wrong, and it's I don't feel like we have a structure that's conducive to next man up. I really don't, because the next man up has been riding the bench for 6 months waiting for his opportunity, and he's not gotten a single MLS minute.
And you can't blame him for not being ready.
No.
He hasn't played in 6 months. You can't. Playing the game and practicing are two totally different things. So you can't blame this guy for not being ready. Like I hate it when Rumor would bring up Ronaldo, let's say Ronaldo, for example. This guy didn't play for a whole month, and all of a sudden he picked him to be the first sub off, to be the first sub on, and then we as fans, we're wondering like, man, what the hell? Come on, man, score a goal. But you can't really blame the guy. The guy hasn't had no game
time,
no game minutes, game time yet for a month, 5 weeks. I mean, it's hard, man. It's not just turn on the switch and turn off the switch.
Well,
if that was the case, everybody be doing it.
Exactly, and there's something to be said too that the MLS play is faster, than your USL play, sure, but if they're not getting any play, it doesn't matter how much faster it is. You still got to get them game minutes. Game minutes provide them confidence. It provides them that football IQ, and it provides them a chance to stretch their legs and to get comfortable playing the style you want them to play. And I just feel like that's something we've really, truly been lacking forever, always. It is a way to develop those players and to give them opportunities where, they're not reliant upon waiting for the Dynamo, for either the player in front of them to get injured or, go off for national team duty for, a month. And then, when that player comes back, they know they're going to be supplanted. I don't know. I don't know the ultimate solution. I don't know what the Dynamo plan to do this season, but I sure hope they plan to address it because it is very clear that is one of the biggest struggles the Dynamo have right now is there's a lack of a pipeline. There's a lack of development of players, and it doesn't fall squarely on the shoulders of RGV, and it doesn't fall squarely on the shoulders of the Dynamo coaching staff specifically or the Dynamo front office. Front office are finding talent. They're finding talent at both, at all levels. The problem is your coaching staff has to be able to utilize it, and the Dynamo organization has to set up for players to be successful. And right now, I just don't feel like they're set up to be successful. And I don't know. I've had it kind of hinted to me in the past that it's not on Matt Jordan. Matt Jordan's not the one who makes the call of who gets called up and who doesn't get called up. That falls on the coaching staff. But that tells me that, if Matt Jordan isn't the one making those decisions and it's the coaching staff, that should fall to Tab Ramos. And hopefully Tab Ramos comes in and after, really just a few weeks of dealing with the situation the way that it is, he goes, you know what, this is not conducive to the development and growth of young players. You guys need to consider doing it this way. I know that's going to take a change in philosophy and approach, but it's more beneficial to you long term. It's going to save you money long term.
Let me ask you something, Sean. You bring up a great point, but going back to the fact that you got to take the word of another coaching staff and RGV, right?
Yep.
So put yourself in Wilmer's shoes for a sec, right? We had 10-game losing streak or whatever after the Gold Cup. Mm-hmm. We weren't scoring no goals, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what's the quickest way to get some goal scoring? Let me go to RGV. Let me see who's the highest scoring. Michael Salazar's the highest. Bring him. What position does he play? Doesn't matter. Bring him. He's scoring goals. Okay. You bring Michael Salazar in. You play him out of position because he was playing center forward in RGV, right? Well, obviously
yeah.
he's not gonna replace Mauro, right?
No.
So where do you put him? You brought this guy to scoring goals because he was a goal scoring machine in RGV, but you're not putting him anywhere to succeed to score these goals because first and foremost, if you were gonna bring him up and take Mauro out, okay, fine. We might have a little bit of backlash, but that backlash would go away if he was playing the position that he was playing in RGV and he started scoring goals. Because, let's say, for example, he brought in Michael Salazar, and let's say, he was scoring goals. Would you be upset that Mauro got benched?
No.
like who knows? What if you brought in Michael Salazar and he played the natural position that he played in RGV, which is center forward, and we didn't have that 10-game losing streak, and we actually won some games during that time period, and who knows? We might have made the playoffs.
I
But
think
you don't.
I think the new Dynamo makes a really good point. He says they need to have a trusted coach that can say, "Hey, Tab, this guy is rising in the position you need. No need to necessarily move the team," referring to RGV specifically. And that's what got me about the Wilmer relationship, because Gerson Echeverry is a coach that Wilmer knew personally. The only reason Gerson was even given the opportunity at RGV is because Wilmer basically said, "Yes, that's my guy." So you had a guy that Wilmer should have trusted to be able to say, "Hey, these are the players you want at the Dynamo," or these are the players you want to give minutes because they're going to show, up, and it hurts me to have a situation where it felt like Wilmer didn't give a damn whatever Gerson had to say, that it always fell to whatever Wilmer needed, that was what was brought in, not where a player was succeeding or excelling. And so I think that's such a great point, that it needs to be more about when a player is succeeding and doing well and he's in form. That's when you bring him in. When he's at a high point in his confidence, you bring him in and you leave him in the position he's in. And if the Dynamo can't find a way to utilize him, like I said, you send him back real quick. But if you have an opportunity to utilize him, you utilize him. Whether that you have to, you give Morrow a rest. Players need rest. It's okay to rest players. Rest Morrow for 2 or 3 matches, or cycle them in and out, so that Morrow can get some rest. It works to the favor of both players.
But see, that's what I'm saying though, because the fact is that if Salazar did sub Mauro, what did Wilmer do? He moved at least to center forward instead of putting Salazar in the center forward and leaving Elise on the wing.
Agreed.
Like why would you do that? Michael Salazar is not as quick as Elise. He is not, well, from what I've seen and from the games that I've seen him play live when he was a Dynamo, he looked lost out there on the wing.
Yeah.
He looked lost, completely lost. And then when he was finally given the opportunity to play center forward against Club America, the guy doesn't know how to score goals, because guess what? He hasn't played that position in a month or 2 months or whatever the month.
And you shattered it. You shattered his confidence. Being a center forward or a second forward or whatever, that's a confidence game. That's a mental game as much as a physical game. Michael Salazar absolutely had the physical talent to be a good forward. Problem was, his confidence was completely destroyed. Yeah.
He's a national team player. I mean, he played in MLS before. He has the experience. But the thing is, the mishandling and the miscommunication and the not being able to, I don't want to say, grab the bull by the horns and be like, you know what, Mauro, you're not scoring right now. I'm going to put Michael in.
Yeah.
The inability to do that is what harms him. And unfortunately, and I say this with real regret, that that might be the end of Michael Salazar with the Dynamo. To be honest,
it might be, and it does disappoint me as well, because he was talented, very talented, and the type of player that could be could have been an eventual replacement for Elise.
Yeah.
Morrow. Sorry, Morrow.
Yeah, or even if he didn't get to that level, he could have been a suitable backup, a suitable sub, like a first attacking sub.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because obviously you think about, okay, you invested money in Ronaldo Pena, you brought him in, right? You got Christian Ramirez, you got all these guys. But the thing is, there needs to be communication from both the senior team and the development team. Like, hey, let's say, for example, what are we looking for this season? We're looking for a number 10, right, Sean?
Sure.
If RGV has a guy playing the 10 right now, or has somebody who's capable playing 10, or whoever in the Dynamo system that is really good, like playing out their mind, they need to take a good look at that. They need to they need to be able to communicate that firmly to the first team and to Tab and to Ramos and to Matt Jordan and let them know, hey, before you go out and spend money and bring in a number 10 that's gonna put a roadblock on this kid, because obviously if you're gonna pay money to bring a player in, you're gonna roadblock somebody. You have to look at this kid. You have to look at this player. He might be the solution. Now obviously us as fans, we don't want to hear about some no name somebody coming in and hopefully being the savior, because how many times does that actually happen, right? But in the occasion that does happen, guess how much money you saved, and then guess how much money you can put into something else.
Yeah.
But the thing is, but you can't do that, because if it was me, if I was in Wilmer's shoes or in Tab Ramos' shoes, now that he's the manager, I want to see this for myself. I want to see this when I want to see this when this kid doesn't know that I'm coming over to RGV to watch him play. Like when you when you hear like, oh, scouts are going to be in the match. Players play better because they know that scouts are going to be playing the match. I want to see him play without him knowing that I'm watching.
Sure.
So the best way to make that possible is to have the team closer to Houston. I'm sorry, it's just this whole RGV experience was great, was cool, it was a nice try, but hey, let it go. It benefits RGV. That stadium needs to be filled up. They need to be making money. It's sad that RGV can't play in the U.S. Open Cup and play some play competition, MLS competition, because they're affiliated to the Dynamo. It's sad that that they can't do those type of things.
Sure, right? So they could be knocked out in the first round. I mean, what?
Well, but you get to play against MLS talent, right?
Sure.
You're playing an MLS team. That it's not about them.
What are you talking about? RGV always got to play against MLS talent because we'd call up 90% of their players.
Oh man, but honestly, those guys are not MLS talent. So,
what? You don't feel like North Texas Rayados aren't MLS talent? Come on now.
Man, come on. But like I said, man, I mean, it's just one of those things where I hope. I don't expect it in the first year, obviously, in Tab Ramos' regime or something like that. But I hope if everything goes well, and they really let Tab take the bull by the horns with this team and really steer the ship in the right way, that also one of those things that comes up, like, hey, we need to stop this RGV thing, and we need to bring the team here. The team needs to be here.
And that has been one of the things that I've actually suggested and have wanted to see happen. Like I said, I don't know whether the Dynamo say, okay, RGV, we're kind of done with this partnership, or if Houston just starts their own USL club here in Houston, and then and filters players to both. I could be okay with that. But I do agree there needs to be something a little bit more localized than is current, and it doesn't have to be in Houston proper. It can be in Sugar Land. I'd even be okay with Victoria. South is fine. Southwest is fine.
And the new Dynamo says you can watch video. Yeah, obviously. I mean, technology is amazing. You can do a lot of things nowadays. But the thing is, it's one of those. But there's tendencies that you can only get from watching a player play live or practice live.
Are you really gonna sit there through the full 90 minutes of video?
No. I'm not saying you're gonna sit there during the whole full 90 minutes or through the whole practice session or whatever. But what I'm saying is that given that opportunity, especially if there's a player in your youth system that you're hearing a lot about, I like me as a head coach. If I was a head coach, I would like the opportunity to be able to walk over and go watch this kid whenever I had the opportunity to. Without him knowing, without anything going around. Because, I mean, if Wilmer or Matt Jordan is going to RGV, everybody at RGV knows that Wilmer or Matt Jordan are coming to RGV, right? So, obviously, all the players are going to stand up straight. They're going to try a little harder, or whatever, because they know that the big bosses are coming up, right? Yeah. So, I just want you're not going to convince me that having a team in RGV is a better solution than them being in Houston. I'm sorry. It's just whatever. You can tell me, you can watch video, you can watch tape, yeah, but how many tapes of players have been watched thinking, oh, that player's amazing, and then he's a bust.
And like I said, I mean, I do agree with you. I just think that the one thing we lose if RGV goes independent or we divest ourselves of the RGV partnership relationship, what we lose is that reach into that area and what that can mean for prospects, from an academy standpoint, from a young player standpoint, and being able to spread and reach the Dynamo Academy reach further is significantly diminished if you lose out on that region because you pulled out. So, like I said, my solution to that is specifically start a Houston-based franchise for USL, leave them at the lower USL level, let RGV have, send 3, 4, or 5 players to RGV, but you fill out the entire, Houston 2 roster with players that you want to develop, specifically the 2 or 3 or 4 players you send to RGV. Have those be more your players that are coming back from injury that need minutes, that kind of thing. Let that be the type of relationship where it's more players getting minutes here and there, but RGV is still kind of RGV, whereas your Houston 2 is your players you're trying to develop. I feel like that's what we're missing. We don't have a development squad or a development franchise. What we have is we have a rehabilitation squad.
No disrespect to Rio Grande Valley, I'm sure it's a nice town and everything, but if I'm a 13, 14-year-old kid and you have a Houston Dynamo scout at one of my games and he's talking to me and my parents, hey, would you like to join the academy? Yeah, let me go to Houston. I don't want to be in Rio Grande Valley. So I mean, like, I understand what you're saying, that we will lose out some, I guess we will lose a presence in Rio Grande Valley. But
well, and but that presence extends beyond the Rio Grande Valley. That presence extends into Mexico.
Yeah, that's true as well. But I think the Houston Dynamo brand would expand more into Mexico by their developing of players, which we're doing neither at the moment. I mean, teams know Mexico, the country of Mexico. They know of MLS. They know of Houston Dynamo, especially because it's the closest MLS team to Mexico. Aside from maybe the Los Angeles teams, but for the most part, we're dropping the ball on the developing thing. I don't want to carry too much on back and forth with this.
I mean, we only got like 12, 15 minutes left, so.
But yeah, man. It's just you're not gonna convince me that having the team in RGV is better than having them in my backyard.
And I won't argue. Like I said, I can't argue that point. I don't think anybody could truly argue that. I do think there are benefits to having a team in RGV that it has an affiliation with the Dynamo. I just think that having one in your own backyard has more advantages, but that doesn't mean you have to lose. You have to choose one or the other. I think that there's absolutely an opportunity to have, both and be able to leverage both and be able to utilize both. But it falls on the Dynamo to make that decision. It falls on the Dynamo to figure it out. And if they're going to continue pushing the RGV because they want it to succeed, then I think they need to put RGV and RGV players and Dynamo players in a better position to succeed by leveraging RGV appropriately. Again, it's just not conducive to player growth and player mentality and even player psychology for that matter. But there were a couple of things that came out this past couple of weeks that I want to talk about real quick before we kind of wind down the show for the night. The first is talking about, NWSL real quick. We've got an expansion franchise coming in 2020, most likely with Sacramento. And then we've got an expansion franchise coming in 2021 in Louisville. And what that means for NWSL, I think it's a huge deal, right? Because forget the fees that teams are paying to get into the league, but you're creating opportunities for more stable NWSL franchises. Right now, there's a few franchises that are struggling that can use stability. And, whether it's because in Sacramento and Louisville both are actual really good locations for an NWSL franchise because both of them are strong soccer towns, just in general. They really are. And so being able to build franchises for NWSL and MLS, ultimately is a big deal. And Sacramento was just awarded an MLS franchise in 2020 something. I don't remember exactly what year. 2026, 24, maybe 2024. 2022, maybe that was what it was. 2022. Sacramento was just awarded that franchise for 2022 in MLS. And so having an NWSL team to buoy off that is going to be tremendous for them. Still waiting on the official 2020 announcement, but I think that's probably going to come down. But again, it's just huge for NWSL because it's showing stability and bringing in stable markets. So there's just still a few markets that aren't quite stable. I'd like to see maybe some outside investors come in and put some money into a couple of the franchises that maybe need it. But it's just good to see NWSL growing and becoming more stable, certainly. And I think that bodes well over the long term for the league. And I just wanted to bring it up because it was something that had come up and something that I've wanted to talk about, but obviously haven't had the opportunity to really dive into too much without a show.
No, but you know what? Since we're talking about that, do you find it a little bit odd? I follow world soccer. There's been a couple of clubs, like in England and in France, kind of gone under, and they've been bought, or some of them have actually gone out of operations. And this is big clubs like Bolton was almost gone, and remember it was the English Premier League club that Stewart.
Well,
Stewart
yeah, Stu, yeah,
or whatever what the club was, but do you think when stuff like that has happened around in world soccer, and these clubs are obviously clubs that have been around for 80 plus years, right? Do you think that makes it more hesitant for MLS to go to a regulation structure? Because I mean, obviously I think as fan bases, we want that promotion, that promotion and regulating structure because we want motivation. We want to play for something. But if these clubs around the world are struggling once they lose that first division money, how much do you think a team like, let's say for example, like if the Dynamo got regulated to NWSL or whatever,
MLS,
like
USL. Sorry, USL.
Yeah, USL. I'm sorry, USL. Like, how much do you think the Dynamo would be able to survive? How long do you think they would be able to survive?
And that's the point that I've always made, is that it's not financially viable. Not only is it not financially viable for MLS teams currently, it's not financially viable for USL teams that are on the cusp. And here's why. Your cost for travel for MLS is substantial, and that cost falls on the team. The team is only MLS teams are only given up to 4 charter flights that they can schedule under MLS pay. Otherwise, they have to pay for the rest of their charters. And most teams don't charter flights. They just, they do their 4, and then they'll do, basically commercial flights from there. And why is that important? Because now your USL team that was able to compete basically regionally, because that's how USL is structured, is you have your West and your East Conference, and they're then you have your smaller divisions. They're no longer in a division, and they're just traveling Texas, Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, and Missouri, and the Midwest. Instead, they're traveling out to Toronto. They're traveling out to Vancouver. They're traveling over to New York and to Atlanta. You're hitting every corner of the continent, of the country. And, from a cost perspective, it's cost prohibitive to do that. And so for all those that say, well, those USL clubs that are on the cusp, they could handle it. Well, they're not only are they footing the bill for the extra travel, they're footing the bill for the new players that they're going to have to bring in to be competitive at MLS level. And your MLS franchises that would go down to USL, they would dominate USL. And you could say, oh, there would be some clubs that would give them trouble. Sure, would give them trouble. you would have 3 or 4 clubs over the course of an entire season that maybe would struggle, that they would struggle against, not even struggle against, but that they would have a hard time winning against. But it would be it would be just like the Premier League. Your teams that are going down, they're usually coming right back up, with the exception of a spare few that are just in such dire straits that there's no chance that they go back up.
Yeah, I understand that perspective of it, but like, so I mean, you have all these new teams coming up, right? And they have all these investment groups, and they're paying these outrageous fees. Like, what is it now? Up to 200 mil.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
A fee for a franchise. Like,
it's like 260, 280 now, but yeah.
Like that's crazy to me, because you think about it, like the richest guy from England just bought a League One team for like 128.
Yep.
You know, like that's crazy to me. Like, I don't like. I mean, because you think about it. I don't know what the exact numbers are for the TV contract with ESPN and Fox and Univision, right? And I don't know, obviously, the whole spectrum of how much money is made from all the endorsements, right?
750 million for the broadcast rights, 750 million over the course of 10 seasons.
Okay, so I'm gonna look at it from a Premier League standpoint, right? Because I know Premier League well, right?
Yep.
So the TV contract for Premier League is in the billions.
Yep.
And they get divided up 20 ways, obviously, because 20 teams in the league or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a special incentive. There's a special there's a chunk of money that gets held from the 3 regulated teams and the 3 teams that get promoted from the championship. So what happens is, say for example, like let's take last season, Fulham got regulated, right? And let's say the normal amount, let's make it a fat number of even numbers to make a simple math. It was 100 mil per team that each team gets. I'm sorry, 50 mil. So what they would do is, because they're being regulated, they would get half of that, and the other half would go to one of the promoted teams. To help, with the bringing in of new players, the new luxuries of being of a higher flight, right? Of a higher level of football. Could something like that? Do you think something like that would be a possibility here? Like, because like the TV contract money, I mean, you see the numbers on Twitter, like they're talking about, MLS playoff games are down. And granted, I'm not really too happy with the times that they put the MLS playoff games on. They're playing up against NFL. They're playing up against right now the World Series and other things, other aspects. So obviously that TV contract isn't too lucrative, but all these fees that these new teams are bringing in, so 200 mil a year, that's supposed to be divided up into the clubs, the existing clubs, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many new teams have come in the last 5 years already? Like, I would think like these clubs are rolling in money.
Well, it doesn't necessarily get divided up among the clubs. It gets divided up among the club owners. Now, that's important because their investment is devaluing to some extent, because they're spreading that across a larger portion. They're spreading those broadcast fees across a larger portion. They're spreading the TV money, they're spreading the advertising money, etc., across a larger portion of teams. And so therefore their stake in that, their percentage of that, it is diminished a little bit. So they're paid, those expansion fees are supposed to cover that loss of revenue for each of the other teams, but it's paid to the owners, it's not paid to the teams. Why is that important? Because again, ownership does not necessarily feed that money back into the club. And that happens over in the Premier League as well. That money is not directly handed into the club. It's handed to the owner, and the owner determines what they're going to do with that money. Now,
I'm an Arsenal fan, I know.
I'm a Tottenham fan, I really know. But the reason I feel like promotion relegation is one of those things that's not going to happen here anytime soon is because MLS is still considered a single entity structure, or single ownership entity structure. That means that all contracts for players are not owned by MLS clubs. They're owned by the league. Players are essentially owned by the league. And so because of that, that makes it very difficult to have promotion relegation because when a player goes down to the USL level, that player is still under a contract with MLS or no. So there's a lot of things from a business management standpoint and sports business management standpoint that have to be addressed first. I think if we're ever going to get to promotion or relegation, the first thing that has to take place is MLS has to relinquish their hold on player contracts and let teams and clubs manage contracts as the club. They need to feed more money into the club and stop being the ones that control player contracts.
No, you're right. I totally agree with what you're saying, and I just threw it out there because, you're talking about the expansion over there in the NWSL and stuff like that. And it had me thinking, like the valuation, the true valuation of these teams, because we see teams being bought out, AC Milan, other teams, just teams in general in Europe. And I'm like, man, these teams are being bought way cheaper than what I thought they would be valued for the long history and all that stuff, and obviously still a business aspect of it. But like, they make it seem like these MLS teams are $500 million worth of franchises.
Well, and that's the thing is MLS is an up and coming league. So those investment groups, and there's a reason why most of your ownerships tend to be investment groups, is because it's an investment. It's not just buying a team. It's not like the NFL where most of your owners are just buying the team because they want to own a team. Whereas in MLS, it's not because a owner wants to own a team. It's because they want to invest not only in the league, but in the team. Because they understand soccer is a growing sport. And you can see it just in the amount, not only the expansion fees, but in how the broadcast fees have increased over the last 10 years, 10 to 20 years for that matter. And so those types of things continue to grow, and they're going to continue to grow, just like they do overseas. Just like we continue to see transfer fees overseas go to astronomical levels year over year. We're going to see Harry Kane next year probably leave Tottenham for, probably $500 million, it feels like at this rate. And it's ridiculous, but I think we're going to get there real soon. We're talking $500 million transfer fee. I think it's going to happen in our lifetime. But before we end tonight, I want to go through something real quick with you specifically and anybody in chat who wants to answer these. So this week, the Dynamo and Dash sent out an email with their 2019 Dynamo and Dash end of year awards with some specific categories for the different awards. And I wanted to get your thoughts on the different awards in terms of who you would pick. And then we'll go from there. And I won't make you pick Dash players unless you want to. So we'll start with Dynamo MVP. Who's your most valuable Dynamo player?
My MVP, honestly, and this might be out the blue, is for me is Vera. He was the most consistent.
100% yes.
He showed the most. He played regardless of what the score was. He was out there hustling.
For sure.
I mean, yeah, you would love to say Mauro or Albert or whatever, but a lot of those goals were just empty goals, honestly. Sad to say.
And how many matches did Vera miss in his first season? That was a ridiculously low number. Maybe one, and it was for a red card. I mean,
yeah, I know one for sure was for a red card. He had a yellow card accumulation.
Yeah,
but it might have been one, and maybe that and one other game. But so what? He played 32 out of 34 games.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It's ridiculous, especially as a DM.
Yeah.
Well, DM/CM. Yeah. So no, I agree with you. And just so you know, that's who I voted for. I voted for Matthias because I thought, out of everybody on this team, he absolutely deserves to be the most valuable player this season.
And what's the other categories? Defender of the year?
Maybe? Yeah, Dynamo Defender of the Year.
Defender of the year. It's kind of hard when they give up so many goals, huh?
Oh, I know who I picked.
Well, I mean, man, I guess I'm gonna have to go with Kiki, but in a way, I kind of want to lean with Figueroa for some reason, because the fact that the way he came in, and he just came in like last minute, and to be starting and to be like for the first 2-3 months when we were up, like him and Kiki they were holding it down, and then for him to go play his international duties and all that stuff, and then still come back and still play and give all out, like he's a true professional, and Kiki he just Kiki he's that aggressive center back that no bullshit attitude that he's gonna go put a spike in the back of your hamstring if you don't chill out. And I like that. You need unique characters. You need attitude like that sometimes.
I voted for Adam Lundqvist, and the
Okay.
primary reason for that is there were not a lot of players that were capable of playing both left back and right back when AJ went down again.
Yeah.
And he slotted in at right back, and I thought he played pretty well at right back when he was there. But he was so much better at left back, in the time that he played over there. And I for one, I am. We didn't talk about this. I'm curious to see how Tab Ramos's hire affects DeMarcus Beasley. Like you said, does he go to the business aspect, or hey, maybe does Tab talk him into sticking around for another year? I guess we'll see,
I,
right?
no, honestly, I'm glad that Beasley's retired because now Lundy that's his position.
Exactly.
That's
No, agreed.
that's his.
That's his
And
spot to lose.
yeah, and the reason my vote wouldn't have gone to London because the times he had to sit down to let Beasley play, and all this other stuff, and then you had the other players ahead of him. But when he was out there, yeah, he makes a difference. He's
Sure.
not afraid to go up and be a part of the attack and then run back and defend. Like there was numerous of times where one of the center backs missed on their tackle, and he was right there backing them up, and that's what you want in a left back or right back. That's what you want to help cover and cover that wide game because let's
And I
let's
didn't
let's let's, let's
I didn't want to fault him for Wilmer's poor choices.
obviously, you know.
So next category is Dynamo Young Player of the Year. So this is for players that are 23 or younger. The list that they have up, and then it does include an other option, but Matthias Vera, Memo, Alberth, Alejandro.
I would have to go with Matthias on that one too.
Matthias gonna
Um,
walk away with all of them except defender at this rate.
maybe he probably get that one too.
I
Because,
actually voted. I actually
but
voted for Elise because when Elise was on,
for Elite,
he was incredible.
yeah. What you call it? Just going back on Matthias, I mean, for him to come over the way he did and to really, the crazy thing about this, Sean, is like it was supposed to be him and Cabezas,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
like, and that's the hard thing about this situation that like Cabezas, like the last 2 years, it's crazy how these injuries have just derailed him.
Completely,
Like
100% yes.
like is he even on the team next year? I don't know,
I don't think so.
honestly.
I really don't think
Like
so.
yeah, and you know if they can find another Matias Vera out there in Chile or Argentina or wherever, whichever club he was playing at the moment, I'm all for it.
And then last category is Newcomer of the Year. So these are players that this was their first year with the club.
Three Pete.
So I'm gonna
Matias.
argue. I'm gonna argue this one with you, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I'll tell you who I voted for in the process. Christian Ramirez had the bigger impact from the moment he stepped on the pitch.
Yes and no, and I'll tell you why. The and it's again, it has to do with the fact that Wilmer kind of held him back when he first came in, right?
Sure.
Because I was one when I forgot what game it was, but he came on as a substitute, and like instantly, him and Mauro were clicking.
Yep.
And then for the next 3-4 games, we didn't see that. We didn't see those two again together. And in my mind, I was like, what's going on? Like, you traded for this guy to obviously come help bring a spark. That when he was that sub, he made that happen, and then you don't play him again with Mauro.
Yeah, I think that
Like,
was.
what's going on?
I think that was a
Yeah.
Davy choice, not a Wilmer choice. Just so that's clear.
Okay. Well, regardless of whatever who it was, like I think that's one of the things. Like, yeah, obviously the last month of the season, he with his attitude and his presence and the goal scoring that he did. I think what he ended up with like 4 or 5 Dynamo goals.
Four
You
goals
know,
in 8 games.
yeah. So it's a pretty nice, but it's too small a sample size. And my dude Matthias, he was out there grinding the whole year. So
Sure, and I can't argue I can't argue with Vera as newcomer of the year, except for I think that the bigger overall impact to the team in the time that they were on the pitch comes down to Ramirez for me, and I think it's just I think it's just ultimately for me in voting for Ramirez, it's just he was so good. Vera was good, but he was that quiet good, and so he was the anchor that we had to have at D mid. But I think there were so many chances where Vera made mistakes throughout the season. And I felt like, and I'm not knocking him specifically for a lot of those, but it comes down to, for me, that Ramirez at his position, in my opinion, was better than Vera was at his position over the period of time that they were both with the Dynamo.
Well, you gotta give him count. Ramirez is used to MLS. He's been playing in MLS. Vera, this is his first year.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
so there's a little bit of a grace period of trying to get used to the league and all that stuff. But for what I'm saying, Vera, for the fact that he got used to it as quickly as he did and was able to be a lot of great help, because like I said, we were counting on it to be him and Cabezas, with really Cabezas leading the CDMs, but it ended up being Vera. you know, if it weren't for him, I mean, who knows how many more goals we would have been scored on? Because I don't know if Saran would have been able to play up to that level, or Boniak. I mean, for as much water as he drank from the fountain of youth this year, I mean, he is 35, 36. I mean, he can only do so much, and you can tell how much slower he is now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you lost a lot of pace, and I think you lost a little bit of his creativity at times, too, where he just wasn't able to be the same player. Well, yeah, I just wanted to run through those just so we had a chance to, since that did come out today/yesterday, and I think today. So I wanted to take the time for us to go through those and just kind of share our thoughts. And I just I think closing this show out today, I just want to echo again. I've told you guys why I love Tab Ramos as the guy, and I've said repeatedly that it's important to remember that we had a ceiling of what we were going to get. We weren't bringing in a Jose Mourinho. We weren't bringing in a Tico Ferretti. We just weren't bringing in a Van Bronckhorst, even if Calla wanted him to. We weren't bringing him in.
NYFC.
Wouldn't surprise me. But on the flip side of that, we got probably the best guy we could have gotten, in a time when we most need a guy that is capable of creating a system and building a system that is effective all the way across the board, and participating in a system all the way across the board, and utilizing a system all the way across the board. And I feel like that's the one thing we've really been missing, even going into the kind of the latter Dom years, is we just didn't have the development of players. And if there is one thing that Tab has proven he is capable of doing as a coach and as a manager, it is developing players. And I'm going to say it here and now. I think the team, not only next year, I think the team comes out guns blazing. I think they struggle a little bit in the early games in terms of getting kind of defensive stuff figured out. But I think they come out guns blazing. I think this will be the most prolific attack the Dynamo have ever seen in MLS play going into next season. I don't even know who the players are going to be, but I think under Tab, we are going to have the most prolific attack that we've ever had.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what you're saying, man. I mean, I'm excited. It's the start of the offseason. We got our head coach. We got all these drafts coming up, all these player acquisitions that we can do, and then we got the January transfer window and the winter window, all that good stuff. So it's going to be an exciting time to see what kind of players they're going after and who actually comes into the club and who leaves and all that great stuff. So looking forward to it. And I have positivity in my veins for the Dynamo next year. You know, playoffs shouldn't be that hard for them to get to.
I mean, we as close as we've been the last few seasons in particular. It's not going to take a massive overhaul or a massive change. I still think we're in for a pretty good change, but it's not going to change. Not going to take a miracle to make playoffs next season. It's just going to take some things going right. And I'm excited for the Tab signing. I think it's a good start to an off season that needs some good things to happen. Like you said, we've got player acquisitions that are going to happen. We've got a transfer window to deal with. We've got multiple drafts to deal with, and a whole lot more coming up. And so, guys, at the end of tonight, right now, make sure you like this stream, share this channel, share the video, and subscribe to the channel so you can get alerts whenever we post new streams, whenever we go live, and. We're working on, or I'm working on some stuff. We are working on some stuff this off season to improve the stream. We hope to, have those done by the time preseason starts, really, in January/February, and we hope you guys will be pleased. And so, if you're inclined and capable of doing so, please hit that donate button so that we can do more things, because that would be amazing.
Also, I'll be showing my face here in the upcoming episodes, hopefully.
That's right. And we will have video. That is not something I'm going to not have this time. Like I said, it was just because I had computer issues. But that will be a thing of the past moving forward. But, guys, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for chatting with us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys, and we appreciate your passion and everything that you guys bring to the show is definitely appreciated, and we hope you guys will join us again next time. Don't know when that's going to be yet, but we do hope to do at least 1 or 2 shows during the holidays coming up, because we're getting close. We'll keep you guys updated on days and times. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
Get your body on my body.